Shalom Aleichem Rabbeisai, this is Yehuda 11, and the program is 11 at 11, heard each and every Thursday evening at 11 o'clock on 620 WSNR AM radio. I'm your humble host, Yehuda 11, with 98% of my brain tied behind the backs of Rush Limbaugh, Donald Trump, the whole Ardis Yisrael, and many other thousands of people, just to make it understandable, to bring it down to the level of Hashkafa 101 that we got from the Gedolei Yisrael of yesteryear, that in the 1920s, the Italian who was taking care of delivering eggs, he understood the Hashkafa better. You understand, when he had 10 kids and he was going to church every Sunday, he understood it a lot better than a lot of the Haredim who are shaking their long, shackled manes as they walk down the main streets in the Haredi communities. Lebech, it's a bitter gelächter. We're going to get right down to it, Rabbi Isai, another very exciting program with the Hashkafas of Gedolei Yisrael of yesteryear, and I'm joined once again, I don't know, this for sure the second time, maybe it's the third time that we have with us the covet of having Elliot Resnick, the editor-in-chief of the Jewish Press, who has mamish revamped the paper in so many ways, whether it's the dispatches from the culture wars, or whether it's Rev. Avigdor Miller or Rev. Hershel Schachter on Halacha, and the whole thrust of a lot of the things that are going on, the reportage, where not one Haredi newspaper has the decency to be concerned with our own sisters in the Eretz Yisrael, what's going on with them, with the conscription, the abundance, and so many other things where the Jewish press has become literally cutting edge. And I want to give a shout out recently that Jerry Greenwald, one of the publishers, suffered the loss of a brother, and I went to be Menachem Ovel him. And he was extremely interested, even in the middle of his Avelis. He was interested in discussing how he should deal with the problems about the politicians and the immorality. And he expressed, and he has been expressing for some time, a very warm feeling towards understanding the problems that we have in the community and how much law and legislation impacts on us. And that the man in the middle of his shiva could want to discuss this with me. It's a true zchus for him, for his entire family, for the entire extended family of the Jewish press. And we want to take the opportunity to wish Reb Jerry and the entire family, Mrs. Mauer and others, that they should only know simchas from now on, and to give them a bracha that they should continue to be matzliach in doing what Shalom Klass did. I remember way over 50 years ago, I remember reading the Jewish press when they were having Shendel and Braindel. We're talking now in 1964. We would come home Friday night, and we would walk home with a friend, and he would discuss what this week's Jewish press was about. So we go back a long time, and Rabbi Klass was very, very good in the moral values, and this is a bechina through Elliot and through the cooperation of Jerry Greenwald and others. This is being marza ateres liyoshna pashet, and it's setting the path that Rav Shalom Klass set in the early 60s and the 70s for what Jewish media, Orthodox media, should be all about. There's still a shining example, although I don't agree with everything philosophically. I'm not exactly a raving tziyoni, but nevertheless, we have to be maked toiv that is compared to the Ated and Hamidiyah and Ami and Mishpacha and Zman and the people who machzach nish wissen that this whole Indian of morality doesn't exist. So they're neutral schakendek kulam, and it is a tremendous schus. Gadol ha'maasa yosim and the oisa. The one who causes this to happen is greater than the ones who do the deed. If you cause somebody to give tzedakah, you get more credit. And therefore, that's what my friend Reb Elliot is doing, and we're tremendously grateful. Shalom Aleichem, Reb Elliot. Thank you so much. And you know why? It's a rainy day today when we're taping this, and Elliot schlepped on public transportation to come here. Not something to do with the Jewish press per se, but he has a gewaldige feeling for Kedusha and tznius. And he's been very bothered, as have many of us who've seen over the last few years. We've seen advertisements in subways and in the buses for a museum of, and I don't like to use this word, and I almost never use it. When I talk about differences between Zachar and Nekeva, I use the word gender. I don't use the word sex, because that word has a connotation of activity. And therefore, when I have to use the word for For intimacy, I don't use a three-letter word. I say intimacy, I say conjugation, I say assignation, for those who know what it's about. In other words, it's a Gemara in Psachim, one of the few Gemaras that Yehuda 11 can actually quote at the very beginning of Psachim. It speaks about how the Torah went out of its way to say, it used, I think, 8 extra letters to bring out. Instead of saying Behemoth Tamei, I guess it said Ashaynenu Tahira or something like that. So this is the message. This is what we're doing. Leider now, unfortunately, we have a situation where our children and our adults are besieged and beleaguered and assaulted visually by these horrific advertisements for something. So this bothers Reb Elliot, and he wants to do something about it. And a few weeks ago, he editorialized in the Jewish press, and I've set the background now. So Reb Elliot, what did you say in that editorial in the Jewish press, and what should the people know, and what should the people be doing?
Right. So these ads started running approximately 4 years ago, and they're not X-rated, but the pictures are always highly suggestive, and they're always sandwiched by the words Museum of SEX, or to use a euphemism, Museum of Tashmish Hamita, in big, bold letters. You can't miss them, you can't avoid them. Now, when they first started appearing, I figured, okay, they're inappropriate, but they're here today and they'll be gone tomorrow. Most ad campaigns last a week or two. This ad campaign has lasted approximately 4 years, which is absolutely unheard of.
Right.
I take the A train and the F train to work almost every single day. I see them on those subways. I see them on other lines as well. I don't have to tell you, the F line runs through Borough Park. Right. That means that Hasidim are seeing them. That means that the Shiva boys are seeing them. That means the Beis Yaakov are seeing them. Every single day, you can't miss them. They're in your face. So the question is what to do about it. So like you said, we ran an editorial 2 weeks ago. The editorial was called MTA Take Down Those Ads. And we noted several things in the editorial. Number one is that the MTA does not actually accept every single ad that is submitted to it. The Museum of SEX was founded in 2002. For over 10 years, the MTA refused to run these ads. The museum actually wanted to run the ad with the words Museum of SE asterisk. In other words, instead of the last word, it would say SE and then an asterisk instead of the letter X. Even that was unacceptable to the MTA. Just last year, the MTA refused to run a product it considered indecent, immoral. It refused to run the product. Last year also, this museum was advertising on the outside of buses that were driving through Brooklyn. People complained, and the MTA actually took down the ads. So that means the MTA is sensitive to the public's opinion, the public's feelings. Evidently, though, on this particular issue, we haven't made our feelings clear enough. And I think that's a mistake. I think many people, so why is that so? Why do people not speak up? So I think perhaps many people do not ride the subways. Their kids see it every day, but they don't realize that because they're at home, they don't see it. So out of sight, out of mind, they're not paying attention. Other people, they just grumble to themselves. They say, okay, you knew it's here. What can I do about it? And they don't say anything. I think it's a mistake because people think it's not going to make any difference. Nothing's going to change. I think that's a mistake that people have on all sorts of issues. I'll give you 2 examples from the Jewish press where pressure did change things. Arnold Fein, our previous editor for many, many years, was running a column called I Remember It When. Right. And when I took over as editor last year, I stopped running the columns because he passed away around 5-10 years ago. Right. These were all reruns. There was no reason I felt to run them. Right. We stopped running them, though, and we got several phone calls from people who complained. They liked it. Older people especially liked it. Right. So I said to myself, you know what? Older people like it. These are old stories anyways. I'll start running them. Right. So in that case, a few phone calls made a difference. Another example, the Jewish press used to spell Hashem's name sometimes G-O-D, sometimes G-D. We did a mixture. The news stories, we had O. For some of the Torah columns, we had a dash. I spoke to actually Herschel Schechter about this around a year ago from Yeshiva University. And he was telling me how Moshe Soloveitchik, Rav Yosha Ber's father, felt that G-O-D has a kedusha. Moshe Soloveitchik apparently would not even walk into the bathroom with money in his pocket because money has G-O-D in it, and he felt it had a kedusha. He wouldn't walk into the bathroom. Rav Schechter told me that Rav Yosha Ber, though, he felt that G-O-D is like a kinoi of Hashem. It's like saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you could write on a paper and you could throw it out. It's not Hashem's name. Same thing as G-O-D. Apparently, that was the opinion of the Rambam. So there's different opinions, and the Jewish press used to have it both ways. Somebody called up or emailed me, I forget, and he said, no, it really is not proper. You should have God only with a G-D. And I changed it from one phone call, one email. So that it just, even several people complaining can make a big difference. And now, of course, Bar 11, if you got 1,000 phone calls, 1,000 emails, you would continue doing what you do because it's important. It's a principle. But most things are not principles, and most things and most people are not super principled. I don't think the MTA has a campaign to corrupt the youth of the city. I think they just run these ads because they figure that someone wants to run the ads. The person is paying money, so they run the ads. I don't think this is a matter of principle. And I think if we applied pressure, we have hundreds of thousands of frum Jews in New York. If we speak up, if we complain to the MTA, we email the MTA, we call the MTA, we complain to our representatives. We have local representatives. I think if we complain, we can make a real difference. People get very excited when Ilhan Omar from Minnesota says something that's against Israel. And everyone goes out on the streets and they complain. It's not clear how much of a difference that makes. Ilhan Omar is in Washington. She's in Minnesota. It's a very big country. I'm not saying it's not important.
No, it does. It makes a difference because you bring out the Nuclear Carta with the Palestinians in Sassur. It makes a tachlistic difference.
That's true.
I'm being sarcastic.
I understand. But it's still important, but it's not clear to me that we have a huge difference in cases like that. Here's a local issue.
Absolutely.
We have hundreds of thousands of people in New York. We're talking about public transportation. This is not a private company that caters to a few people. This is public transportation used by old people, by young people, by men, by women, by religious people, people who are not religious. This is public transportation paid for by tax dollars. I think if we really spoke up, again, we have hundreds of thousands of people in New York. I think if only several hundred of those people, we're talking about 1 or 2% of these people, complained and spoke up, we would make a difference. And we're talking about also Ilhan Omar. Again, it's important, but we're talking about abstract importance. We may have a difference. We don't know how much of an influence she has, how much of an influence she doesn't have. Will it have an effect 5 years from now? Will it have an effect from 10 years from now? It's all important, but it's not clear. In this particular case, it's very concrete. There are concrete ads that every single day, over 4 million people ride the subway every single day. So every single day, at least hundreds of thousands of people, including many thousands, tens of thousands of frum Jews, including children and teenagers, are seeing these ads. Tomorrow, thousands of people frum Jews will see these ads. So it's very tachlis, very concrete. In terms of the victory that we can have if we make a difference. And that's why I'm happy. Thank you for inviting me to your show today. Because I want to solicit the help of your audience. I really think we can make a difference.
100%. That's what we're here to do. We're here to speak about morality, and it's very interesting. They would with Avigdor Miller, Erev Yom Kippur, they say, or Erev Rosh Hashanah, or whatever. He was sitting and he was busy with the petitions that the little petitions in his shul about morality and decency. That was what he felt was, his avodah before the Yom D'Roim. So it's 1,000% like that. Now let me ask you something. Just if you did any research, first of all, the Orthodox representatives that we have in the city, are they doing anything about this? Have they been notified? Do you know, like our city councilmen, the Fruma ones, or the ones who are so-called in the Fruma areas, are they doing anything about this?
I don't know. I emailed all of them. I emailed some of them more than once. I didn't hear back from them. That doesn't mean that they. Well, it just means that whatever it is, they did not answer.
Is there, on the city council, is there a transportation committee or something like that?
Look, I can't tell you all the ins and outs. You would know better than I all the ins and outs. But we definitely speak up. We see there's our leaders of our community. There's rabbis who runs organizations in our community. Absolutely. If they hear from enough people, if they read it in the Jewish press, and then someone, Mr. Joe Schmo tomorrow approaches them on the street and say, I read in the Jewish press about these ads. Why is that happening? And then they hear it on the Mary Levin's show, and then they hear it from a third person.
Absolutely.
Simply, they'll do it, first of all, because it's right. No one's going to defend this. Certainly no frum Jew is going to defend seeing these ads every single day, day in, day out. And again, it's a fixture of the New York subway system. We see many things in New York we don't want to see. But most things, we could avoid it. We don't have to go there. It's here today, gone tomorrow. This is the subway system ridden by so many people. And it's a fixture of the New York subway system now for 4 years. Have you ever heard of an ad campaign that ran for 4 years? I never have.
I never even thought of it. Excellent point.
So I think if all these people, even some people who are not as morally conscious perhaps as you are, but if they hear it from enough people, they'll do something, because at the end of the day, it's also part of their job. It's what they're supposed to do. They want to get reelected. They want to represent the community. If they hear it from 3 or 4 or 5 different people, they'll do something. They'll speak up.
So I think that right now, I think that one of the things, I'm just schmoozing with you. We're having a strategy session on how to defeat this thing, and and Taif Shnaim and the Echad, we can interchange, and maybe I'll have an idea, you'll have an idea, you'll explain why certain things might not work or whatever it is. But in other words, right now, if we want to tell the listeners to contact the MTA, let's say, as Joe Schmoes, plain people, to start to hit them with phone calls, do we have a number or a contact for them?
So I tried researching this issue.
Wow.
Officially, you call 511 to complain to the MTA.
Right.
But I also Googled it, and apparently there are a lot of people who've been trying to complain to the MTA about various things over the years. If you Google it, you'll find several websites where people say, how do I reach the MTA? I'm trying to reach the MTA. They're not answering. So apparently I found there is one link, which apparently is like sort of a comment link where you comment. And someone said that when he commented there, he got a response right away. But I would do both. I would complain to the MTA, but I think a better strategy probably is to complain directly to our firm leaders and to our councilmen and our representatives. I think if they hear from enough people, I think they're going to do something.
Right. So the first thing on this, the very first thing is that I myself will undertake Belineda to reach out to Reb Chaim Deutsch and to ask him. I'm sure there's a transportation committee, and that, who else I'll reach out to, Belineda? I'll reach out to Reverend Ruben Diaz, who's probably the most concrete moral person, I'm sorry to say, on the city council, and he would be very sympathetic to this. And they kicked him off the taxi and limousine subcommittee that he was the head of, where he was helping the Hispanics and he was doing positive things for the taxi industry. They kicked him off. Why? Because he said that there's a lot of homosexuals controlling the city council. Now, I can't imagine when you have a speaker, Corey Johnson, who's an open militant homosexual, a former homosexual reporter for the Gay City News or whatever publications he was in. I can't imagine, and you have other open Mishkevei Zacha, and they vote overwhelmingly for the legislation. I can't believe how Diaz had the fantasy to think that there might be some kind of homosexual influence in the city council. So he lost that chairmanship of the committee. But nevertheless, we have to find out, first of all, who the transportation people are. And we have to work in Jaeger and Chaim Deutsch. They have to help us with this. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think that we have to ask, I would like to turn to Torah Messiah, and I would like to ask them that locally that they should send out a letter to the parents without mentioning, they just have to put in the letter the offensive museum that's on, they don't even have to write the last words, and they have to ask people that the schools are saying that this is killing our kids, because the schools should feel this, they should feel sensitivity, and therefore if the yeshivas and Beis Yaakovs send out letters to ask all the parents to contact the MTA. So we have to do two things. We have to find out how to contact them. We have to demand, this is an outrage in itself, that you have to call 311 or 511 or whatever it is to get to them is an outrage. It's a chutzpah. It's like in this time there shouldn't be such a defense, mechitzas. So in order to do this, we have to find out from our councilmen how can we make that these things should be directed to the MTA, and there might be something else. It never hurts to give a little cover. So what we might do is we might direct all of the stuff goes to Councilman Deutsch with his haskama. I would only do it if he's masking, that everybody should send petitions and letters and everything to Chaim Deutsch through snail mail or through emails, etc. And then he should present these things at a press conference that will have people, and we'll get people from the Catholic, the Muslim community, will all stand there in City Hall. Chaim Deutsch will have some covered. Instead of giving us Walt Disney drive-in movies on Chalamayid, we thank you very much, or beaches to go swimming, we thank you very much, but much better to stop the schmutz. So I think this is good, and Chaim's basically a decent guy, and I think he would be masking to such a thing.
And I think I think both need to be done, but right. I think it's probably better.
Go ahead.
Like people like Chaim Deutsch or Kalmi Yeager, because they're supposed to answer to us, because they represent our communities. And I think they will. I think the MTA, in theory, could afford. I don't think they'll ignore regular people, but in theory, they could afford to ignore 50 phone calls, 100 emails, even 200 emails. I don't think our firm representatives could ignore us as easily, because we're the people who need to vote for them. Yeah. And that's all I just want to say, just to add two more things. Sure, going back to the teenagers, we're talking about certain yeshiva boys or Beis Yaakov girls who don't have TVs in their homes, maybe don't even have the internet. But because these ads are running nonstop, and because they're so in your face, big letters,
stealing the innocence of people and making less susuru.
So for 4 years of high school, from 9th grade to 10th to 12th grade, they could be seeing these ads every single day throughout all of high school. And I just want to add one more thing. I think I read it in the Gesher HaChaim. I think the Chavetz Chaim wrote a sefer, Gesher HaChaim. It's about sneas and covering your hair.
Oh, okay.
It's I translated it into English. I found it in somebody's house. I read it.
Right.
He gives a mashal there. I believe it was this sefer that I read it about where if somebody is very upset at another person, he wants to hit him, wants to kill him.
Right.
But if his friend starts screaming at the person he's upset at, his anger will be assuaged because someone else already did the screaming.
Okay.
The Chavetz Chaim says the same thing about Hashem and Pritzos. I think he's talking about Pritzos.
Right.
And at that time, 1910, 1920s, he's talking about women not dressing properly.
Right.
He says if no one says anything, Hashem will be extremely upset at us and punish us. That's what he says. I mean, he's very down to earth, very very straight, very plain spoken.
Right.
He says, but if we say a macha and we defend Hashem's honor, then Hashem won't be as upset because he'll see at least somebody is defending my honor. I don't have to punish the Jewish people so harshly as long as somebody else is defending my honor. So when we speak up, it's important to speak up because to hopefully accomplish something. I said very concrete. I think we could avoid millions of eyes from looking at these ads. But besides for the concrete tachlis, we also are defending Hashem's honor. Hashem doesn't have to be upset at us because he could see somebody else is standing up for my honor. Somebody else is doing. I think I mentioned to you, Rabbi Levin, on the phone that I saw a news article not so long ago that 8 liberals got arrested. I think they lied down on Rockefeller, the ice skating rink. Why? For global warming. They're protesting global warming and they got arrested. So if 8 people could get arrested for global warming, we have hundreds of thousands of frum Jews in New York. Who's standing up for Hashem's honor? They're standing up for global. They're willing to go to jail for global warming. How many of us are willing to go to jail to stand up for Kedusha? And we don't have to go to jail, not yet for this, Baruch Hashem. All we have to do is go on the internet, look up some of these people's emails, send an email. We're talking about 5 minutes max. If you don't have the internet, you could probably call information to get these people's phone numbers to call up. It's not that hard. You see them on the street, say, it's not right. My son rides the subway. I don't want him seeing it. I don't want myself to see it. But Kal V'chomer, I don't want my son to see it. So I think there are many things we could do, and we should do if we believe in Kedusha. These are things we should do.
100%. Well, I just want to comment. Just as you're talking, different things are occurring to me. One of the things like this, you said, a million eyes. I want you to know that it says in Svarim, everybody before they pass away, the Malach HaMavis comes to them, right before they pass away, and the person is so frightened from the Malach HaMavis that he opens up his mouth, and then the Malach HaMavis has a sword. And on the sword, on the tip, is a little piece of poison. This is also a spiritual concept, and sticks it into the mouth of the person, and that's how the person expires. Now, what else does it say? What does the Malach HaMavis look like to that person when he's dying? The Malach HaMavis is like an entity that's all covered with eyes, because of all the V'leisa Surus and everything that the person sees, and the fright of the Malach HaMavis with all the eyes and everything else is unbelievable. The Svarim say, on the other hand, that when a person, then the Stipler spoke about it, but it's some Kadmonim, when a person's walking the streets and they pull their eyes away from something that they see inadvertently, and they pull their eyes away, at that moment they're in the Bechina of Yosef HaTzadik, because Yosef HaTzadik pulled away from Eishes Potiphar, and at that point you could ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the gates of heaven are open for you, and you could ask big bakashas. So the concept of Leisa Suru and the opposite of Leisa Suru is a tremendous it's a tremendous accomplishment. And all right, there was something else, but I'm having another senior moment. There was some other things that you mentioned. You mentioned something about the Chavetz Chaim, and he said that when somebody does some kind of mecha, it mitigates a lot of the choroin afay Kadosh Baruch Hu, even if seemingly we don't accomplish. So with this, we can understand, again, I apply things in an autobiographical way because my favorite subject is to talk about myself. I use this as a my public forums. I use this as a form of therapy, sort of by speaking about myself and getting out things, etc. So if I had enough money, I would send you and all the listeners a check for giving me this therapy. If you keep it bottled inside yourself, it's not good. So here's a Maisa. The day that they declared that they would start to initiate same-gender marriage was on a Sunday, which never since the history of the United States did they open county clerks' offices throughout New York to perform marriages. And Michael Bloomberg, the Jew boy, stood on the steps of City Hall, and he performed the first marriage that got international coverage on that Sunday. It was a marriage of two, of course, workers for him who were both Jewish. On the steps of City Hall, it was covered by BBC. It went around the world. The Jewish mayor, the two Jewish people, and of course, the ceremony wouldn't be complete if they didn't have two pretty blonde-haired little maidlach put the glasses under the, I don't know, what do you call them, chassan kala? I don't know what you call them. And they both stepped on the glasses because it's egalitarian. You know what I mean? So that day, the Gentiles, Johnny-come-latelys, but more than the Jews at least, they scheduled in 4 cities throughout the state marches to protest what was happening. 60 or 70 Hasidim came down from Westchester County, from the Kashauers. They came down, they marched separately. Anyhow, I'm marching, and this tall, angular person with a walrus mustache, white hair, is holding a tape recorder. He's interviewing people a few rows in front of me, and I'm very dejected, and I'm walking with my head half down. I see him. All of a sudden, this guy gives us a geshrei. Yehuda, what are you going to do now? I look at him. Who? What? I'm honest and talking. Who cares? So he comes over to me with the recorder. And I mutter. I don't even look at him. I mutter, I guess we'll have to go to court. So he says, in court, what will you argue? You'll claim like this, you claim like that. I see the guy knows the parasha cold much better than me. So I take a close look at him. I say, aren't you Andrew Hum? And he gets very happy. Now, I hadn't seen Andrew Hum for many years, when I used to stand on the steps outside St. Patrick's Cathedral, because the Catholics wanted to show it's not just a Catholic issue, that when they would have to pray down Fifth Avenue, they would blaspheme on floats, half naked or three-quarters oisvarf in the Mishkevei Zacha. They would curse the church, and they wanted to show it's also an interreligious issue. And I would come down there every year. So one year, there's a picture in New York Newsday of a young, dark-haired Andrew Hum, and he's standing and sticking his face. There's a line of Gentiles and yours truly, and he's screaming at us. He's from an organization called ACT UP, and he's a top person in homosexual media. So he, all of a sudden, when I recognized him, he was so honored. All of a sudden, it became Rabbi. Rabbi, you remember me? They were so happy, so proud. So I said, tell me something. Did I ever do anything to preach violence or anything close to it against the homosexual community? He says, not you, Rabbi, you never did. But people could have, from your opposition, people could have extrapolated, and they could have been violence. I said, don't start telling me this baloney that I can speak up for biblical values from thousands of years ago because you have some kind of a cocky-locky idea, et cetera, So now that we've established that I haven't done anything to your people, why are your people attacking us? He said, Rabbi, we're not attacking you. I said, oh, yeah? Now your next step is you're not finished. You want to chase the women out of the ladies' rooms when some weirdo who says he's trapped in the body of this or that, he wants to come in and chase out all the ladies. So you're attacking us. He says, Rabbi, if a person has to expletive delete to do something, what should he do? He should do it in the street? So Hashem put the bar in him. I said to him, no, he should wear adult diapers and not chase the ladies out. Yeah, this is called the Tzonusa de Arayas. Pashut. So, and then I turned away from him because I was sick of him. I'm a maneuver. So he sees that the interview is over. So this is what he says as he's leaving me. He says, you and a handful of people held up this day, either he said 10 or 15 years. And he walked away. I said to myself, this is crazy. I couldn't get myself arrested. I had no secretary. A lot of times I had to take public transportation to get them to City Hall to make a press conference. How did I stop it for 15 years? He's a Meshuggah, or 10 years. He's a Meshuggah. That was Sunday. Friday, Shabbos, I had time to think. It popped into my head what he said, and then I realized HaKadosh Baruch Hu was sending a Bar Yoini. He was sending one of the opposition to say that because a handful of people were being moicha, we were able to hold this day back for 10 or 15 years. And I told this over to various Talmidei Chachamim. And I said, if you would go over to Andrew Hum today and say, what did you mean when you said that to Levin? His political smarts, he was such a strategist. I don't even know if he would know what he was saying, but that's what he was sent to do. So this augments what you said with the Chavetz Chaim. And people don't understand. When one or two or a handful of people do something for morality, Besides it, the Sefer Hasidim says that Neutel Schak Keneged Kulam, any mitzvah that's laying on the earth, you get Keneged Kulam means there are 3 million Jews in the world. You got schar for 3 million Jews. But besides for that, you have a spiritual thing that you hold up the negative aspects of that. So here's a chance for us with very little effort to do something which could have a profound significance in morality, and it could trigger it's a mida connected mida taiva maruba. It could trigger a lot of siyata d'shmaya and fighting all kinds of immorality if we get together with this. So this is a very simple thing to do. So I'm committed, Bulineda, to call up Chaim Deutsch and to ask him that we should make him a headquarters for this. He could pass it on to Yeager if he wants. Yeager's wife is, I'm sorry, I have to apologize and say this, but Yeager's wife is too busy tweeting greetings on Israeli Independence Day and to all the gays who are marching and everything else, and that's what she writes on the tweets. With all due respect, I've appealed publicly to Yeager in the past to stop voting for some of the Mishkav Zacha bills and everything else. Maybe this is a chance for him to redeem himself, I don't know. But anyhow, we'll put this forward, and let's hope that we can also discover a way that we could also directly impact on MTA. In other words, we should do 2 things. I want the MTA should hear directly, and then I want Chaim Deutsch to collect petition signatures, and I want to suggest to Torah Masora that they should have a letter going out to parents so that thousands and thousands of parents should know that this is, and if they refuse to do this, the Yeshivas of Bnei Yaakov, then they're not guilty of a sin of omission, of just not doing the right thing. I think it will be commission because they're supposed to be doing this. We bring it to their attention, and that's it.
And I think we have to remember that we were successful last year. Last year they were taken off the buses after we complained.
Right.
So we should remember that victory is within our hands.
Very good. Okay, Elliot, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming by in this inclement weather and everything else.
My
and
pleasure.
You should continue to be very much liach in what you do with the paper. You should know it's jujitsu, Jew. Some people, jujitsu is when you use the force of something else and you harness that force and you flip that thing over to your side. And you're doing Jew, jujitsu, that you're using the power of the Jewish press, Jew, you're using it to alert people, thousands of people, to inspire people, and the Shemayim. This is a tremendous shield of protection for us, for Fruma Yidden, wherever they are, where they get the Jewish press, that at least people are reading these things. So it's you should have the koyach, and you should know personal simchas in your life and in your family, and we should have a Swiss Tavis.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Rabbi Sai, we're going to continue. I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to tell you a quick Dvat Torah that's a fascinating Dvat Torah. Could you imagine? The Sfarim say by Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. I should have said this last week. I didn't have enough time. Listen to a fantastic thing. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was in Meron, and he was dancing with the Arizal, the famous Maisa, that the Charedim was a shamus, a simple shamus. Nobody knew how great he was, and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was dancing with this Charedim. So people said, I'm sorry. The Arizal was dancing with the Charedim. So people came over to him and said, Rebbe, he's the itinerant, the ignorant shamus. He's a shamus in the shul. What is a person like you dancing? So he says, what am I dancing? Did you see that tall man there, the distinguished looking aristocratic man with the turban on? If the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is dancing with him on his yahrzeit, on his Yom B'Delula, I shouldn't dance with him? So you see, Claude, that the Arizal had his galus of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, here's the Maisa. There was a Yid who used to say Nachem, the prayer of Tisha B'Av, every single day by davening. And once he was by the Kaisel, and he saw a shrouded figure of black, a woman, and I think the woman was crying and everything else. And he told us the Arizal said, you were zeicher to see a physical manifestation, though we don't understand, it's above our pay grades, of the Shechina weeping for the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And the Arizal says, you know why? And you know why you say Nachem every day? Because you have a nitza, it's a spark of Yirmiyah Hanavi. That's what he tells him. Now listen to the end of the story. This Yid, he's on in Meron for Lag B'Omer. And it comes Mincha time. He davens, he says Nachem like he does every day. The Arizal receives a visitation, whether in a dream or B'Haketz or B'Chaloim, from Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, And it seems he's very angry. And he says, on my Yom Hilul, on my Simcha, this person here is saying, Nachem, console us Hashem, and the Lord of Beis Hamikdash. So he says, I want you to know that in the next few weeks, he's going to be receiving consolation because he's going to lose a child. Can you hear that? So you have a question. Rashbi, who it says he could have been pater the whole world from din for all time, the Rashbi is such a tzaddik. Of course, it is true that when he came out of the cave after 12 years, they caused a fire to start burning, and they were sent into the cave for another year to understand their level of kedusha. But certainly in the aftermath of that, how could Rashbi be, it seems, egotistical, chas v'shalom, and a balkaisen, and to give such klolis? This is a pella atzuma that I don't see anybody discussing. How could he say such a thing? So I want to propose to you an answer with a Gemara in the end of Masefta Tainus. The final Mishnah says, and I want to wish you a l'chaim again. I started to make the brachas before the program started. The famous Gemara that everybody knows, Lo hayayamim tovim liyisrael ki yom kippurim v'tu b'av. Frek the Gemara, bishlam yom kippurim michlis avaynis, ein simcha k'michlis avaynis. We're being, is the word expiated. We're receiving atonement. We're doing and we're receiving. Okay? We're atoning and we're receiving forgiveness. So we understand why that's a Gavaldiga Simcha. But what about Tu B'Av? So the Gemara gives various answers. And one of the answers is because on Tu B'Av, since the sun is waning, it's going towards the fall already, so the sun is not strong, so it doesn't burn up the worms before they passel the wood to be used for Atzei Maracha. So all of the wood for the Atzei Maracha that they use for fuel throughout the year in the Beis Hamikdash had to be collected before Tu B'Av. By Tu B'Av already, they no longer had to busy themselves with collecting Atzei Maracha, the Kahanim. So says the Gemara, the Moisef Yosef, whoever increases in learning Torah will increase his life. Listen to this. U'deloi Moisef Ketolei, and the one who doesn't increase, the Kohen who doesn't increase his learning because he has extra time now, Ketolei, he's Chayav Misa. If that's not bad enough, the Rabbeinu Yoin has a nusach, Deloi Yosef, Tik Teleime, his mother, Tik Bereime, his mother will bury him. Yeah. So I have the same question over there. First of all, it gives such a klola to the kohen who doesn't. Okay, he's a batlan, whatever it is, but he has to die. He has to be chayan misa, and if he did, what are you doing to the mother? Tikbari ime, his mother should bury him. That nusach Rabbeinu Yoina and the other Rishonim. So I said, pshat is like this, as I've often said from this forum. If you take your hand and you knock over a pitcher of water, is that you are, and it falls and the water spills out? Okay, is that a curse? That's not a curse. That's a cause and effect. So the Gemara is saying like this: Tu B'Av is the day of Shidduchim. It's 40 days before the Yetziras Havalat of the world, which started on 25th of Elul. 40 days before, it's a Baskel goes out of the Zivug. So the Baskel said that Klal Yisrael, humanity, is going to be, so to speak, married to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the day of Zivugim. And a reflection of Zivugim. It's a Sadie Hawkins day. For those of you who understand the ancient British custom of Sadie Hawkins, that the ladies would run after the men for Shidduchim, it's taken from this Tu B'Av scenario. On such a day, we know the power of the Jewish woman to be mashpia on her husband and mashpia on her children, because Soim L'Beis Yaakov and Achakag v'Saged L'Bnei Yisrael. So, if on the day of Tu B'Av we don't see that her son, the Kohen, is increasing in learning, that means she didn't do a good job of chinuch. So we're not cursing her that she physically will have to bury her son. We're saying that your son that is chayiv misa, it's not only something negative for him, but it could be even if you're in the olam ha'emes, or if you're around, and if he taka dies or whatever it is, you're not going to have any nachas. It's going to be a bechin of tikber ime, because you have a certain responsibility. You want mechanech your children the right way. So that's how I answer the Gemara. It's not a curse, it's a cause and effect. The Gemara is using a sharp, melodramatic way of telling us the importance of chinuch, and what a son does or doesn't do, what a daughter does or doesn't do, has to do a lot with the chinuch of their parents and their rabbeim and their teachers and their mothers, etc. Now, let's get back to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, was he cursing? Who says he was angry and he was cursing? What he was saying like this. This man who was so holy that the Arizal said he had a nisus of Yirmiyah. Now, if he was by the Kaisel on Lag Ba'ima, it could be that on the Kaisel you should mourn for Hashem's, the loss of the Beis Hamikdash and Shchinta B'Galusa. But you come into the very town where Rishim Bar Yochai was buried, and he was buried in the very cave where he learned the Torah, and he ended Torah Shabbal Peh, which is why there's a halul of Rishim Bar Yochai. He put the last bricks on that which his Rebbe started, the Messiah of Rebbe Akiva, of being Dorish, called Tag V'Kar, Tili Til Inshallah, as every jot and tittle. So on such a day, and you're right in the backyard, you're in the chutzah, so to speak, of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, even though you have a spiritual mission, you are a nitzos, a spark of Yirmiyah. You're the one who has to hold aloft the idea of mourning for the Beis Hamikdash. But you have to know how to bifurcate, and you have to know how to separate, and you have to know how to aim das havdalah minayim. But you have das. You're supposed to make havdalah right here, right now. This is a day which is antithetical to death. It's antithetical to Churban. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, his whole name Yochai, his life. All the 24,000 Talmidim didn't die on that day of Lag BaOmer. It's an anti-death day. It was Eitz Chaim Mil Machzikim. It's a day of Torah, of the Hashlam of the Torah that was effectuated by Rishon Bar Yochai. Okay? Nasa Adam Nema Ba'avuroi, because he was like Adam Rishon Kaidem Achet. He learned Torah in his birthday suit, like Adam Rishon would have learned in Gan Eden before he sinned. Okay? He only put on clothing by davening, as we know. So in such a day, with such celebration, he should have understood to make an exception. By not doing that, he was showing a chesaron kefi his madrega. If you're in the Marines or the Green Beret, you're judged by a much higher standard than a common citizen. There's a much higher military code and a higher military code for Green Beret or Marines, to whom much is given, much is expected. This Nitzes of Yirmiyah Hanavi, he made a mistake, just like Moshe Rabbeinu did little things, and he suffered tremendous penalties, kefi the godless of the person. So Rishon Bar Yochai was upset and aggravated that this was happening to the person. He said, "There's nothing I can do." He blew it big time, because Mida Keneged Mida, he was saying Nachemon was inappropriate, and therefore he's going to have to suffer the chamas. But now let me play this out. When the Arizal came to be Menachem Oval, this Yid, this Tyre Yid, this elevated Jew who was in the Bechina of a Nitzes of Yirmiyah Hanavi, what did he say to be Menachem him? I was not a fly on the wall, but I want to guesstimate. He said to him, Holy brother, Nitzes of Yirmiyah Hanavi, I know how much pain you have, but let me give you some nechama. Let me tell you that 500 or 600 years from now, Yehud 11 is going to be sitting, and he's going to be talking to several thousand Yidden, and he's going to share the important message that when you have a spiritual mission, you still have to be cognizant of all the other spiritual responsibilities, and you have to know how to bifurcate, and you have to know how to accentuate, and you have to know how to distinguish, and you have to know how to prioritize. So because of your holy young son, and because of this episode, thousands or millions of people over hundreds and hundreds of years are going to learn to be more careful in their avodas habayre and in being cognizant of what's going on around them and calibrating accordingly their ruchnias. And therefore your son, perhaps, I'm saying b'derech efsha, you and your son are going to get schusim for this. Cumulative schusim. So you should know that your son is there in Olam HaEmes, and he's getting tremendous schusim and aliyahs, and eventually you'll be there. And Hashem very much appreciates. And b'kroivei akadesh, dafka, he used you and your son to mekadesh Shem Shemayim, the highest standard, and to teach Klal Yisrael a valuable lesson. This is my humble way of resolving this. I don't know if you appreciate it or not. Okay, now we want to get on to the concept of this. In Lakewood, Yara Kodesh, they just came out with a nasifa recently, and believe it or not, they told the ladies that you can now wear shaitlach 2 inches below the shoulder. Now, I grew up, and my mother wore a shaitel in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, the 80s. Most women were not wearing shaitlach that was shoulder length. It wasn't happening. This is recently in the last 20 or 30 years or less. And they walk down the streets, the women, well, you should excuse me for saying this, but because there's a lot of hair in the front and the back and the sides, so they're shaking their heads like this, like a horse shakes its mane, you should excuse me. And now in Lakewood, Yara Kodesh, they have to have a nasifa where they're adding on below the shoulder. You know that Rebbe Eliashiv spoke a few years ago, and somebody asked him about the woman's shaitlach, and he said it's not das Yehudas, and it could even be grounds for divorce. Now that's hardcore stuff. This is from Rev Eliashiv, who sat as a dayan in the Rabbanut. Rev Eliashiv, who sat in Hechel Shlomo, that the Brisker Rav said, you're not allowed to step in there. And this Rev Eliashiv, you understand, was a reign that does Torah. Okay, this is what he was saying. And now in Lakewood, Irva Yisrael, they have to make another concession. Why? Because they see they're losing it with the women. They're losing it. And on my chat, which I strongly advise people to join, where we talk Hashkafa, Motzei Shabbos Bahar, and Sunday, we had a tremendous in-depth exchange about sneers and sneers by women, and we asked questions, and there was 2 brave women who told us, women, number one, they don't want to deal with Yira. You're going to go to hell if you don't do this. You're going to go to hell. You're going to be. One woman said that's what they taught us in kindergarten, and we were rankled just throughout the base. Yaakov, throughout this was always Yira. You're going to go. You're terrible, etc., etc., etc. She said, I want to deal with Hashem and do tznius because of Ahava. Now, what I was trying to explain to her before she left the chat is you have to have a combination of Yira and Ahava. You cannot possibly get to Ahava if there's not first Yira. First is Yira, then there's Ahava, and you need an admixture. So while she might be a little bit right, we have to fine-tune. We have to refine our attitude, our gisha, how we teach young women starting from 4th to 5th grade when they're starting to mature already. Part of the problem is the women, I'm telling you, the 30-year-old women, they have no idea of exactly what a man, women are from Venus and men are from Mars or whatever it is. They don't understand the taiva of the visual for a man and how it plays in his mind and the V'leisasuru, and they say simplistic things. Who's asking to look? I can't be responsible if he looks, etc., etc. They don't know the Rabbeinu Yoina. They don't choose to know it. And intellectually, as soon as you start to tell them, they have a shutter switch. So when you tell them that Rabbeinu Yoina says that for every year who's over V'leisasuru and he goes to Gehenna, the woman who caused him to be over V'leisasuru, even though she's going to be screaming as they drag her down to Gehenna, she's going to be screaming, who told them to look? Where's the self-control? And they don't know this. They don't want to hear this. So we have to teach it to them. First, they have to understand what the taiva is by a man and why Hashem gave a mitzvah of Leisasuru Olav and how hard and how difficult it is. And they have to hear stories. They have to hear stories about Rabbi Mishasha, I forget his name, it's brought down in the Medrash of Vayechi. There was a big tzaddik, and the Satan couldn't get to him. So he asked for shus from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu made him the most beautiful, the Satan became the most beautiful girl maybe that ever existed, or something like that. And she comes into the room, Mishashes, and he sees her, and he quickly turns away. So she stands on the other side. He turns away. On the other side, turns away. So you know what he does? He tells his Talmud, take this nail and go to the fire, heat it up. The Talmud brings back the nail, and Rebbe Shasha sticks it into his eyes, and he blinds himself rather than to be over Loisasuru. It says in the Medrash, the Satan is Nistazeya, he jumps back. He was blowing his mind. How can a human being, a charitz kaima, somebody who was made out of clay, of earth, how could he come to such lifting madregas? And then Rafal, Hashem sent the Malach Rafal to heal him. He said, no, I refuse to be healed because then he'll come again and he'll tempt me. Until there was a commitment made in the Shemayim that he would not be tempted anymore. He was Oymen Nisayin. Now, this might be a little much to tell women, etc., etc. Maybe not. It depends. We need people who are better, well-spoken than me, mechanchais. But it's time that we have to have a new curriculum. And I think this is very appropriate. And I want to just launch this here. And if I have an opportunity, I want to write an article about this. Because we're coming up to Shavuos. And in Shavuos, everybody knows that one of the things we do in Shavuos is we read the book of Rus. And the book of Rus is that this proselyte merited to be the Ema Shal Malchus. She's the matriarch of the entire monarchy of the Davidic dynasty leading up to the Melech Mashiach. Now, how did Boaz meet Rus? What was the tableau, the picture when Boaz met Rus? The answer, we all know. Every child from the 1st to 2nd grade knows this. There's the outline, that picture, the relief, the drawing, the hand drawing of a very tzniistic lady all covered up, and she is crouching down, not bending over, you should excuse me, with protruding limbs. You understand that attract menfolk. And the Gemara says, I'm sorry, the Chazal say, the Chiderach shall boyas the Gadol Hadar to look at woman. What made him look? What made him say, who is this woman? That sneers made him look. It was similar to the Malach who pushed Yehuda to see Tamar, or the Malach that pushed David HaMelech to see Bathsheba bathing. Okay? But that's what's going on here. That relief, that picture of Rus, you can melodramatize it by saying if Rus wouldn't have been a tznuah and crouched down, she might not have been Mrs. Boaz, and she might not have mothered the Messianic dynasty. That's the power of tznius. I want to do something. I want to do an article. I want to do an article in proposing what some of the problems are, and calling in a general way for the Rus initiative. The Ruth initiative. There has to be. It's time to revisit how we teach tznius to our women's folk, because by the time they're 18 and they're let me tell you this one thing, and then we'll move on to something else. Here, listen to this now. The girls were wearing beautiful uniforms. They were in high school, this, and seminary. And they were dressing in a chaste, modest way, more or less. Plenty of kindness on the way they dressed, even when they're in the high schools. But after the high schools, after the seminary, all of a sudden they're dressed to the T's with the cosmetics and with the tighter clothing and more the contrast clothing and the fanciness. It all calls attention to them. So you go over to the 18-year-old Beis Yaakov grad, SEM grad, went to Eretz Yisrael for a year, and you say, tell me something. Is this a way to dress? You realize what you're doing? You're attracting attention and people. It's Averis. Just listen here. My mother, my friends, and everybody else's mother told me, there's a shidduch crisis, and you have a shelf life when you're 18, 19, 20. And then the boys who are 24, they don't want a girl who's 21 already. So therefore, you passed over, you might be from the 15 to 20% who, I don't know what the statistics are, who won't get married. So it's mamash hatzalas nefashos. You, from the moment that you graduate high school or seminary, you're out there in public, 24/7, you have to be dressed to the hilt. Because if one day you walk around and you're dressed plain and without makeup and without perfume, without this and without that, then somebody's going to see you and they say, this is a frumpy type of person. This is a person who's not into it. The husband that says it's not going to, and then forget it. So she says, that's one reason I do this. And what's the other reason? She says, what do you want from me? More or less, this is my mother buys the clothing with me. And my mother also puts on makeup and does something, etc., etc. So what do you want? It's Teresi Mecha. So you go to the mother, you say, Mrs. Chaimo, Mrs. this, Mrs. that. What's going on over here? She says, let me explain it to you. My husband goes on the train every day, and besides for seeing the advertisements for the museum of SEX, he sees in the car there's 40 women with tank tops and with cut-off jeans and with every preaches, and they're stuck, packed like sardines in the summertime and everything else. It's a shrek of the world. And the 3 Haredi women, compared to them, they're nuns, but compared to the way they're dressed with their shmekachs and their fine tight clothing and everything else, there's a lot to be desired. So her husband comes home to me and he says, I don't want to commit Averis and everything else. But do you realize what I go through every day with Lisa Sura? Nobody explains it to the Beis Yaakov girls what the man goes through. So the mother says, the wife says, my husband explained to me, and he says, listen here. When I come home, if I want to protect myself, and etc., you have to be, when you go out, and when I take you to Chasna, when you go shopping in the 13th Avenue and Avenue J, you got to be hoo-ha when I see you, etc., because if not, it's as it is, it's impossible. It's impossible. So now you have the Jewish spiritual ping pong of tznius. You know, like they say, it's only the heel bone's connected to the ankle bone. The daughter says, go turn to the mother. The mother says, go turn to the father. The father says, what do you want? It's on the subway train. And the bottom line is that tznius is in Dreret. So it's time for a Ruth initiative, a new agenda, a second look at tznius. And I hope that we can trigger this in Mitzvah Hashem. In the final moments, let me just tell you, the Oisvarf, the Russia Marusha, that there's no excuse for him whatsoever. 16 years, a lobbyist for Agudas Yisrael. He comes in there, I warned you, and it was in the paper in the Jewish press, Lekvaidam, that they were the only paper that published the truth, while Yated was putting a kiss up, a picture of him on the front cover of the story, Kalish, and they never gave us any information about what he stood for, what he said in the Chicago Tribune, the Sun Times, the JTA, Politico, all over the place. He comes in, he voted in the affirmative, mandating that from K through 12th grade, there has to be the homosexualization of the entire curriculum or curricula for all classes, everything possible, everything has to be with geacht. That was number one. Now it comes to number two. Comes to the most horrific abortion bill in the entire country that gives the woman the right to sue yet if you didn't facilitate the Ritzicha in every possible way. You have no idea that the Goyim are talking about that this is the ultimate worst bill, even worse than New York, if you can imagine what Cuomo, the Russian Russia, did. Okay? So I don't know if it's because of my videos and by the Jewish Press article that I exposed, because I get feedback. I have my informants in Chicago, and I know that it made a tumult. And I know that I've been speaking about this for weeks now, months, and I know that Kalish has been receiving some pressure. And I finally heard that Rabbi First was one person at least who was putting the pressure on Kalish. Now listen to what happened. Kalish went ahead, and although he said stupid things on the media, like, I'm a foot soldier in the battle of Representative so-and-so to keep Roe versus Wade totally sacrosanct, etc. I'm a foot soldier. He says, we can't allow the Trump to appoint another pro-life judge. Afra lepume, it means that he should drop that and he should be third. I don't want to say that, but he should have a lot of dirt in his mouth for saying that. I'm telling you, I'm outraged. A Fruma Yid, 16 years, the chief Aguda lobbyist. It shows the rot gut and the corruption that we're dealing with, okay? So he says that, all right? And he goes 2 days after he's appointed, he goes to Governor Pritzker's Roe versus Wade celebration, and he goes to Planned Parenthood headquarters. It's like, so to speak, akin to going to Gestapo headquarters when they're torturing the Jews there. They stand for Ritzicha. Did he say one word to them? Did he say, I come from a community of Holocaust survivors. Skokie, Illinois is the biggest Holocaust survivor district in the country. That's why they chose to march there many years ago, the KKK, the Nazis in Skokie. Did he say that? Did he say we're sensitive to Nuremberg laws? He said, I dare not. He said, I dare not vote for such a thing. And it's horrific. There were 60 million babies, that 98% of them, there was no halachic religious reason for B'nai Noach or Jews or anybody to do it. Did he say that? Did he go like the Gentile doctors who get up in front of Congress and they take out the things we show this is how you crush the baby's head, the cranium, and suck out its brain materials? You can squeeze it through the birth canal. Did he use this as a teaching moment? No. The Hilaria Oisra of Russia, who fraternizes and smiles with his mishpacha, who's intermarried, like it's something cute. We have to see those pictures that he machzavek with his left hand to intermarriage. The same tzaddik, he did Rabbi First a favor because of the pressure. What do you want from him? He actually voted present and he didn't vote for the bill. Let's give a big hand to Kalish. I'm sure Hashem is having big nachas upstairs, a knipper from Beckel, and to the entire Chicago community with the kiss-up rich guys who, when he comes in there for the kiddush, they fawn all over him and they leck him and everything else. It's great, Chicago. You mark my words, Chicago. It is not a curse. This is a cause and effect. You want your women folk, your Jewish people, more women should get abortions there, find a liberal rabbi and get the heta for the abortions. You want that? That they should get abortions because the kid has Tay-Sachs, so he's going to be a mongoloid, or he's going to be this deficiency or that, or because girls are going to get, knocked up, and it's going to have to be still a hate they're going to want to get so they can do shidduchim. You want that? Well, when you don't do on Kalish what you're supposed to with abortion, Hashem pays back Mida Keneged Mida. That's why in New York, when they didn't do, they almost had the Gezeira of Mitzisa B'Peh. That's why we have molestations, as they say in Williamsburg, where kids are being gechecked in mikvahs and all over, and this and that. It's because you don't do, Hashem pays back the Keneged Mida. Nobody's going to say it. The emperor has no clothes. I'm going to say it. Now, I want to tell you a Ma'aser Rav in the remaining seconds, the remaining minutes. Listen to this carefully. When we got Rav Moshe Feinstein to write a letter calling on every Jew to fill up the city hall to protest when they were voting for gay rights in around 86 or 84 or whatever it was, I think it was 86, when we got this letter from Moshe, he wrote like this: Va'al ha council members, lios ba'ulam, they can't be absent. not to vote present. He writes that in his thing on the Agudas Rabbanim stationery. I have the letter. Ela latzbiya neged habill. So if Rabbi First or anybody else cut a deal to allow this Russia Oisvav just to be present, and we have to genuflect. And remember that Agudas sent a whole group of people to go have a lobbying day. And Kalish was the big hero because he gave them a kosher lunch and everybody was applauding him and everything else. That was after he voted for the Mishkav Zacha garbage. Before the abortion, did one Agudas speak to him about the abortion bill or about the Mishkav Zacha bill? Not by the hairs that are growing on my palm. Okay? Disgusting. And every day that ticks by, it's not done. Rabbi First, with all due respect, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is ani Rishon v'ani Achroin. He's Kaveh compromises on this thing. Not you, not any other Rabbanim. And he has to be scored and scorned, and it has to be in public. And Aguda came out with a statement, and they said, respectfully, we're calling on all lawmakers respectfully to vote against this abortion bill. And of course, all the politicians are reading this thing that they send out to all the politicians. They take it, they're leaning back on their chair, they throw it into the garbage bin, they say, ha, ha, ha. We see the first Orthodox Rabbi Kalish, their lobbyist for 16 years, and he's not even voting against it. They're telling me to vote against it. The Chil Hashem from Aguda, it stinks from Brooklyn to Chicago. It's sickening. It's disgusting. I will not drink the Kool-Aid. Okay? Would they say if there was a law about adultery, would they also say, respectfully, we ask you not to be mad to adultery? If there was a law that would be a Nuremberg type law against the Jews, they would say, we're in Gullus, so we have to say respectfully, please don't kill the Jews. But meanwhile, the Roman Catholics, you should see what a mouth they opened up in Springfield about this bill and stuff like that. 100 times more than the Aguda, where they're tiptoeing through the tulips like Tiny Tim. It's disgraceful. It's got to stop. Moira Rabbi said, this is Yehud 11. Until we meet again, my chat, my WhatsApp, get on the WhatsApp, 718-469-6999. Familiarize yourself. Become part of the Hezbollah, of the army of God to stand up for morality. Check out 11 at 11 on YouTube. Chicago, come back before it's too late. A guten Tamid.